A few on the line. We'll see if a couple more hop on. Welcome to the Advisory Committee meeting for Tri-County Water Authority, and we'll move right into things. If you probably catching it, the end of our conversation here, but Susan Long with the Thule Land Trust is with us today, and she is just beginning there, and will be working with us in all things related to the multi-benefit land repurposing project, as well as, I imagine, many other land fallowing and or projects that happen within Tri-County Water Authority and the Thule Subbasin. So with that, I'll turn it over to Susan.
Hi. I'm Susan Long, previously McCarty, if you're from Corcoran, and you might not know that name, that's Long, but I've born and raised here in Corcoran, worked in the housing, nonprofit housing field for about 27 years, local government and nonprofit, but have a lot of experience with program development, nonprofit operations, and then know the ag world too, because when I first went to college, I actually was an ag science major, although I never did dive into that world as far as work. However, it did get me my first job, even though it wasn't ag-related because of soils, actually. So I'm really excited to be on board. I mean, this is very close to my heart. This area, the farming, everything is home, and I would like to see that continue for years to come, and I know we have work to do to make that happen. Thank you.
Welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Welcome.
Thank you.
You want me to jump right in?
Sure.
All right. So a few updates for the group. Moving right along on the agenda. For the Thule Subbasin and the Toy Lake Subbasin. So let me start with the Thule Subbasin. We have actually submitted round one, the reimbursement request for round one, so there is some money coming back to Tri-County. Not very much. It's a small amount, but at least there's some. That first reimbursement is in to DWR for the round one grant. There is, after that, we expect to have the second reimbursement in by the end of February, and that will, of course, include additional funds for Tri-County to be reimbursed. The Thule Subbasin is working on the annual report, the SGMA annual report that is due April 1st to the state. We expect and hope to have a draft copy of that by the end of the month from Tom Harder's group in Four Creeks. So hopefully either end of the month or early February we will have a draft copy of the annual report. We are eager to review it because we want to make sure that it reflects what is going on in Tri-County and the rest of the subbasin as well. So that document will talk about change in storage for the previous water year, the water year that obviously that was for 22. That was still a drought year, and so we do need to keep that in mind as we review it, and things will probably change as we move, as we prepare the next one for the 23 water year. Any questions? If anyone has any questions, please stop me and or those of you on the line, just raise your hand and we can, make sure we get your questions answered. On the 22 GSP update that we turned in back in June, we understand DWR has not completed their review. They were hoping to have it done by the end of the year. Now they're saying end of quarter one. So, we're in the middle of January, so we're hoping by the March timeframe we have something back from DWR on that 22 GSP update. The subbasin as well has decided to pursue a new update on the groundwater model. So the next update on the GSP will be 2025. It's actually due January of 2025, so it'll start being prepared in 24. And there will be, as of this year, in 2023, we'll be preparing a model update for so Tom Harder and his group are looking to update the model. There's a number of new data sets and information that we have. So, based on that, we should have a revised model by the end of 23.
Yeah, and just on that note, we did, the Tule Subbasin did apply for grant funding for that model update, but we don't know that we'll receive that funding, so if not, that'll be covered by each of the individual GSAs, and so it's just something to keep on the radar. And both subbasins are doing a model update,
Yes.
so Tri-County has in some ways, it's an unfortunate position that we are in two subbasins, so every effort we have the double cost of because they're not combined, so it's something to keep in mind. It's probably both important efforts. We've always known that the 2025 update was going to be substantial, that the department was going to be looking for things that we didn't get in the original plan, that were not there. And we won't really know what they are going to seek from us until we receive the revisions back here at the end of this quarter. I think with that, if they approve our revisions, we'll likely have a laundry list of things they want to see in the 2025 update. So that's what we're preparing for as subbasins on the whole.
What, in just round numbers, the model update, how much?
For the Tule Subbasin, it's 350,000. That's to be shared amongst everybody. Hopefully, as Deanna said, if we get the Sigma Round 2 grant funding, it'll be covered under that.
And then just exposure.
I think it's 14%.
In Tule?
Yeah.
Yeah, in Tule, I think that's right.
Yep.
And Carl, just for, I'm going to get ahead of myself here a little bit, but the Tulare Lake model, that one is at 750, and 250 is already covered under the existing Round 1 grant. The remaining $500,000 is being requested in the Round 2 grant.
Which again, we may not get.
Which again, we may not get, yeah. And I'm going to talk a little bit about Round 2 grant. It's actually on the agenda. The other thing, just to complete the discussion on the Tule Subbasin, there currently DWR has a land flex grant out, and that the short version of that is they are looking at options to or looking for applications to submit requests to pay essentially programs that would pay people not to grow fallow land. It's due on the 3rd of February. They gave everybody roughly about 2 weeks to turn this thing in. They're only awarding 2 or 3 in the entire state, and it is every critically overdrafted basin is eligible, but it is on an individual GSA level. It is not on a basin level like many of the other DWR grants have been. Dan and I went through the scoring criteria yesterday. 45 points of that first 100 or so is awarded to how many dry wells and the density of wells that will go dry. Domestic dry wells, yeah, thank you.
That doesn't help us.
That doesn't help us, yeah.
Initially, I had asked, Four Creeks is going to be applying for Eastern Tule, Pixley, and I had asked for them to apply for Tri-County as well. And but in reviewing the scoring yesterday and looking at how heavily they were gauging the scoring on the density of domestic wells, either in proximity to wells or the density of domestic wells that could go dry, or how many have already gone dry within your GSA, it doesn't look like we'll score very high, so I think we're probably not gonna pursue it. I don't wanna spend the funds on something that is not something that we're gonna win.
Yeah.
What makes it, interesting is the only people who are eligible for this are those who already have an allocation in place and are tracking by either Landsat, which is named in the grant, or OpenET, I think, or metering, but you have to have that allocation policy in place and already have a ramp down schedule to be eligible for this grant. And they had a couple of, other, requirements in there, and one was a communications and engagement plan, a formal communications and engagement plan. I think we'll be seeing that again. Tri-County has a formal communications and engagement plan for Tulare Lake, because it was done for the whole subbasin. We did not do one for ourselves in the Tule subbasin, so I think in preparation, I think more of these grants will come available, and in preparation for that, we're likely going to need to beef that up a little bit, make it more formal, just so that it's boxed and ready to go.
If it's gonna be tied to domestic wells, we're not gonna.
I think the state really wants to get money out there to help bring us into sustainability, and they know that ultimately land fallowing for some areas is what is going to make that happen. So even though this one's very heavily tied to that, for next rounds may not be as difficult. So, but when I look, there's not very many of us who have this eligibility for this grant, but when they start saying they're only gonna award 2 or 3, and Eastern Tule has a lot of domestic wells, Pixley has more domestic wells than Tri-County does, Westlands could apply, and Madera, in those places with heavy domestic wells, and they have the allocation, so they're gonna apply. Tulare Irrigation District, their GSA has a lot of domestic wells, and they have the allocation now, so I think we might have been very low on the list for this round.
There's only 2 or 3.
Even with the state budget upside down, they're still gonna do this.
Yeah. Yeah.
So Adrian is asking which is this?
Landflex.
Landflex, yeah.
Okay.
Kind of connected to the state being upside down, what's the source of the money for this?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Well, like I've asked in the past, because
Yeah,
as a voter, I voted for some of the water bonds to build storage, and
Yeah.
it seems like it gets sprinkled around in everything except storage. Maybe it doesn't come from the state budget.
Carl, I don't remember off the top of my head. We were so focused on the scoring criteria, but I'll look that up and get it to you, but yes.
It's through the Department of Water Resources,
Yeah.
so it's one of those pots of money.
Department of Food and Ag,
Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of a joint.
Well, I'll get you that information, yeah.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Okay, so moving on to Tulare Lake. On the Tulare Lake side, obviously you're gonna hear some of the very similar items. The annual report for Tulare Lake is also underway. We expect to have that, a draft of that complete by middle of February, and share that with this group and with the board, of course. The reimbursement request number 1 for Tulare Lake, in which Tri-County actually does have a substantial amount of money coming back to us. That is underway. We expect to have that submitted by the end of the month. There was a little delay in getting some authorizations and other things in place, but that's been taken care of now, and we're moving forward. And very similar to the Tule subbasin, we expect to have reimbursement request number 2. On the Tulare Lake side, because the GSP update was paid for, the modeling efforts, and some of these other things that I've mentioned, and we actually have a couple of projects. Some of the GSAs, South Fork in particular, has moved forward on their project on the Kings River sedimentation removal. All that money is coming back for reimbursement as well. So there's some fairly large sums of money that are going to be coming back to the Tulare Lake in these reimbursements. The modeling effort there is also underway. they're pretty much still in the data gathering. That model is a complete redo. It is not an update the way Harder's updating the Thule model. Tulare Lake made a decision to completely update the model. So some of you, at least Carla for sure, has been asked to submit some data that he's been wondering why he's already given this data previously, but the modeling team has asked that they want to make sure that every piece of data that goes into the new model, they can verify where and document where that data set came from, as opposed to, hey, we received it from the previous modeling effort. So we're being asked to redo a bunch of work. It feels like, for Tulare Lake, it feels like we've gone now through this for the third time. And in reality, we are going through it for the third time. So we pretty much want to get this modeling effort done, and then being able to use that model to really predict some of the items that we do some runs on the model that are going to predict what's happening in the future. The other item I think that's worth discussing for Tulare Lake is the fact that the Kings County export ordinance passed. Some updates on that is that there is a subcommittee of the Water Commission that is currently working on a draft document to revise the export ordinance, and they want to take that back to the Board of Supervisors. Deanna and I have a copy. We've been given at least the working draft copy, I should say, of what they're thinking for that.
They, or is it Dennis Mills?
I think
When you say they, or is it Dennis Mills?
a lot of it is Dennis, yeah.
But when you say what they're thinking, you're referring to the county, right? Or are you referring to?
The committee. The committee. So the committee is going to revise the document and submit a revised, with suggested changes to the document to the county. But yes, Dennis is the chair of that. Dennis Mills at the Kings County Water,
Roger was the chair there.
I think Roger's the chair of the commission. Dennis is the chair for the subcommittee. Yeah.
In the redrafting group.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's the manager of the Kings County Water District.
Water District, yeah. So I think that one is worth keeping an eye on and staying involved. And some of you may be asked, those of you that do have property in Tulare or in Tulare Lake subbasin, I would encourage you guys, and in Kings County, I would encourage you to stay actively involved and submit comment letters and either in support or in opposition. But I think that one's important to keep an eye on.
Do we have copies of that?
I guess it's you too, yeah.
That'd be great, thank you.
Does Dennis share the concern about what Tulare County might do following Kings County doing this?
You should, everybody should, because Kings County Water Commission's already said that they're gonna look into it. And that it was gonna be elevated to the Tulare County Board of Supervisors. Yeah, it absolutely did exactly what Kings County should have been fearful of before they did this, was trigger Tulare County to look at the same thing.
Yeah. It very much, Mike, in the comment letters that were submitted, including the one that Tri-County submitted, we emphasized to them that concern, that we were, the amount of water imported into Kings County is grossly larger than any export out of Kings County. By the way, I should also say to you guys that so far no one has applied for a permit to export, and no one has submitted a complaint. There's a complaint way that if I think Stacy's exporting water, without a permit, I can complain about, I could submit a complaint, but neither one of those has occurred as of today, so.
Well, I think they admittedly don't have a way to do anything about anything in
I know,
right?
yeah.
I mean, when they walked right into that thing, I'm like, hold on a second. You just passing this,
Yeah.
like, you're like Congress now. We have to pass it before we know what's in it.
Figure out what we're gonna do with it, yeah.
And before we leave office.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah, it was passed,
for that purpose.
yeah, one of those gentlemen was not coming back, yeah. That voted yes.
Is there any rumblings about when that seat gets filled by someone else who's talking about pulling this thing back, or?
Not that I've heard.
Yeah, not that I've heard either, Mike, and that seat has been filled, by the way, you know, that new person would have been voted in early January, so.
What's going on?
I can't remember the guy's name at the moment, but, I mean, I talked to Richard before that, and I told him that it was not the direction they should be headed, and, he told me he was surprised that it wasn't a unanimous vote. He was the deciding vote.
Yeah,
Yeah, he
Yeah.
was.
yeah, it was a 3-2 split, yeah.
Why'd he go that way?
I have no clue.
He gave a kind of a long, not real long, but a little speech that referred back to time when Sacramento water and papers that was being sold. County, and he just felt public comment, I don't know what he gotta know.
That was his sound speech.
That's it, yeah, soundbite. I'm gonna add from my, I know there's feeling among some of the players in the northern part of the county. To me, like Dennis Mills is very even, but what I heard was kind of past bad feelings from the other advisors who were behind that kind of thing, to some degree, I won't say entirely. They're trying to kind of an accounting for what they perceive as past sins.
Mhm.
It has really little to do with actual. At any rate, that's all I'll say. I want to keep it really general, but I felt that I heard that loud and clear in every comment.
I think the reason, just to make sure we bring this up, and you know, this is an advisory committee, but I think I just want to encourage everyone to stay involved. There's you know, just because it's passed doesn't mean that there can't be changes to it and revisions, and stay involved in those, and comment and give your thoughts back to the supervisors. All right, Eric, so much for a happy meeting, huh? Well, I really took that one off the cliff, didn't I? Yeah, now I'm like too depressed to go on here.
Now you only have one way to go.
I know, it's only up from here, Carlo. All right, so, the good news has been we've gotten a little bit of rain, and we've definitely, you know, Deanna has reached out to me the other day, and she said, you know, with all of this going on, the GSA's position is we want to encourage the capture, we want to encourage recharge of that. And we have an accounting system. We have a way of accounting for this, and we felt like we should put together a emergency you know, recharge policy. And so that draft document, which there's copies here in the room, I hope everybody that's online. Yeah. And then Stacy, if we're gonna pull that up too, it's,
You want that now?
no, you just go ahead and make copies for everybody, and then.
You want me to make copies, Stacy, while you do that?
No, it's okay, I'm recording.
Okay.
So Dan, do you wanna talk a little bit more? I mean, you were.
Sure. As the mayor said, we really do want to encourage, anybody who has the availability, to take water during this period of flooding and or, into the spring, and, has a place to put it. We wanted, since we didn't have a formal policy, I wanted to put something before the board, this year, which would be what I've termed an emergency policy that would not, necessarily be the policy ongoing, but for this year, and then we can do something more formally, in the later years. I know Madera did something similar, so there are some issues, you have the availability of the water, we have conveyance issues, so frankly, there are not a lot of people who can take, advantage of this policy, but that doesn't mean we shouldn't have it. So anybody who can, we want to make it available. We want to have a system that will provide credits to your Basin Safe account, I put some percentages on this, but this is a very, very draft form, and, if we get some feedback, from this committee, in the next few weeks, I intend to put something before the board at the meeting and be the 1st of March. It would probably be a retro, so anything that happens between now and then, would be captured, for the season, but anyway, I wanted to get it before this group today. And Americ, maybe you want to hit the highlights of the technical?
Yeah, so, as Deanna said, this is still draft. We're looking for input, so please do not, this is not set in stone in any way. We're open to any and all suggestions. We want to put it in place, so we didn't spend a ton of time trying to come up with a long list of requirements. We didn't ask you to come up and say, okay, tell us exactly the amount of water and why one property might have better groundwater recharge than others. And we said, okay, let's just come up with a value that we can use for this year now, and rather than have require people to come up with the for everybody in the room at least.
Hello?
Yeah. You hear me okay? No. Yeah, sorry. I don't know if probably just talking, I don't know if anyone can hear me.
Like it.
Yeah.
Is anybody on the phone that can hear us?
Yeah, now I can.
We can hear you.
That's Rusty. This is Rusty. I've
Okay.
had
Hi,
trouble.
Rusty. Great.
Okay, great. All right, so, what I was just saying, I want to draw a distinction between facilities that were, planned and constructed for recharge. Those are covered under our existing policies, and they would get the full recharge. If you apply water, like on-farm recharge or some other areas that have not been previously, designed and constructed for recharge, then that's where this policy would come into place. Because we are trying to encourage, oh, sorry, go ahead, Mike.
No, I'm trying to interrupt you, Doug.
Yeah.
I was gonna say, Amir, though, your policy says for a recharge, a landowner recharge facility, you have 75% in here.
Yeah, we were really trying, and again, this is a draft, we were really trying to draw a distinction if you're putting water on any other land other than a, basin that was designed for recharge. If you put it on the basin that was designed for recharge, we'll use the value that you already have for that basin. Because you have a lot of data already on that basin, so we're happy to do that. And if that's better than 75% for that property, you'll get.
Okay, we gotta clarify, because it says landowner recharge facilities.
Yeah. Yeah, this is really, this policy, because we figure people are gonna start putting water everywhere this year.
Right.
And we might as well pay credit for it.
And we might as well get credit, right?
Yeah.
And that's what we're trying to do, is we want this to encourage people to recharge and put water and use that water.
Yes.
So we're
Mark?
trying to figure, so, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, Mark, this is Rusty. I got a call from, a large grower in Merced last week, and, does work with MID, sits on the GSA board. And he was saying that they were not giving them credit for a lot of the water that's been recharged, even though the water is there, that they were holding steadfast to, to how much they were able to pump, and that they weren't going to get the additional credit. Is that what you're dealing with here?
Well, Rusty, what I would say is every district, irrigation district at every GSA is a little different, and without looking at the full policy, it's very hard, to know exactly what they mean by credit. I don't know, for when we're speaking of credit, we already have an allocation policy in place. The landowners already have a credit in their account for, their groundwater, and we debit from that, so this would be a line item in their account for landowner developed credit, which would give them additional credits, to be used or debited from. So it's hard for me to speak to another GSA's policy.
But we aren't getting any resistance to this policy, or have not detected any?
No.
Good. Well, that's good.
No.
That's great.
I mean, I think we've got to encourage landowners to do this.
Yes.
Because when landowners doing it, it's not without cost to them.
Right.
To pump and manage this water, so.
Yeah, that, Mike, you nailed it. I mean, it really is to encourage. We know there's probably gonna be water available, and we want to encourage people. Any water that we also had a discussion about, people that might be recharging outside of the GSA and wanting credit within, and we figured that's already covered under the existing policy. So any of those types of issues would already be covered under the existing policy, which means you have to coordinate with whatever GSA you're recharging in.
Mayor, I wanna
Mark,
go back.
I don't know if it's your sense, but my sense is that the rainfall, the atmospheric rivers, whatever you want to call them, in the last month is going to result in a reset in terms of a lot of the policies. I mean, the people that have been pretty dogmatic in their positions are re-looking at their positions, and I think it's going to be positive for agriculture.
Rusty, there's been a lot of bipartisan letters going into the governor regarding how they manage the system during this, and I'm hopeful too that that something positive will come out of this.
Yeah, and that Paul Rogers article that was the lead article in the San Jose Mercury News. I mean, he's a big environmental writer, been there a long time, and if you read between the lines on that article, I mean, he's calling for a reset, to rethink some of these policies and take into consideration how we're going to get our water, and some of the environmental regulatory policies that people have been, that have been sacrosanct. It was pretty fascinating.
Hey, Rusty, if you could email that article to me, I don't think I've seen that. I'd sure like to take a look at it.
I'll try to get it to everybody. It's Paul Rogers. It appeared a week ago. Well, it was last Saturday, or a week ago last Saturday, in the San Jose Mercury News. It was the lead article, and it was about two little fish, and then it went on and on. It was really well done.
Well, hopefully that thinking will fast forward, because every day, Rusty, we're losing a lot of water up there, so sooner the governor steps in and pushes that.
Yeah. No,
Okay,
this is different. This is different. I think we all recognize it, and hopefully some good will come out of it.
We're back to the policy, though, on when you say 100%, there's still gonna be, every banking policy I'm aware of, there is some leave behind.
Yeah, there would be leave behind,
and so.
I think what he was saying is that if you have a qualified basin, it's already been set what that percentage is.
You're gonna do that one.
Yeah.
Do something different.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to say. Yeah, that's exactly right. But yeah, I want to differentiate between those basins that were designed for recharge versus this policy, which is let's put water anywhere we can.
And if I can make a suggestion, after I was working with BLM in 2017 and 2019, they can take water, and there is some areas in their wetlands where it actually percolates down, and it actually is right on the boundary of, and I would suggest that we set up a meeting with them, and they don't want the water credits, they just want to manage the water, where it doesn't just flow everywhere, but that they get it into the wetlands. And I think we have an MOU with them already, and I would just suggest that we talk to them in the next month and just kind of have a meeting of the minds so that we can put water on that open ground as much as we can and get into the wetlands and work with them, because they're willing to work with the GSA. It's just we need to take the initiative to reach out to them, because when the water comes, they just kind of, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do next? So, and you're aware of that because your land is down near there. So that's an opportunity I think we should look at in the next couple of weeks.
Yeah, that's important, and it's for no other reason. Tri-County needs to know what those numbers are so that we can put those on the books, so that when we're developing our annual report and presenting it to the state, that we're showing them all the surface water that came in during this period and not missing a drop that landed within Tri-County Water Authority. Because somebody will account for that water if we don't account for it.
And Boswell loves it, but it doesn't flow down and into the homeland, so they're happy. They just and they actually had an agreement with BLM, in, I think it was 2019, no, 2017, on water staying on the portion of the BLM.
Where did that water come from? What conveyance got it to the Outlaw Island wetlands? Because this is always my.
This was, it was
It was Pozo that came in from that direction.
It was Pozo that came north, and then we had Alpha out there pumping
Everyone was glad you
water
were
and.
taking it then.
Yeah. I mean, you could have another 17 type year, like, I mean, there might be water.
You never, yeah.
It could happen.
And I think, I mean, you've got 7,000 acres out there, and work with them so that water can be diverted into certain areas, like the area over by Dairy Road. They prefer to have it diverted that direction, and then the wetlands are down on the south end, so, there's some areas out, like where your place is, they kind of want to avoid water going that direction, because it goes towards the city of Alpha. So, yeah, I think, and I'm happy to initiate that with John Hodge and Gabe Garcia, and just say, hey, we'd like to talk to you guys ahead of time so that we don't have a glitch and we can keep that water.
I don't wanna go back though, before, when everyone was offline, you made a comment about when somebody's putting this water in, they gotta show the right they have to put that water in. I think what we ought to do is just have it show the source of the water, because we're gonna have multi-sources blending together, and, you know, we get into this issue of who has the right for, quote, flood water. And a lot of this flood water isn't under license, so, you know, we want to encourage people taking that without saying we have a right, because state board may have a different opinion on that, saying you have to go get a diversion permit for flood water. So I think we ought to have the landowner just identify the source of the water and leave it at that, and not have to have, in essence, any type of prove up on it.
You're not gonna get as much water spread across ground if you have to have some sort of.
Right.
Too many,
Yeah, and then you get into somebody saying, no, he didn't have that right, and so, you know.
Yeah, but you can have those arguments later.
Yeah, well, they can sort that out. Our biggest goal is to get water in the ground, so just put it there, and if they did it wrong, they did it wrong, but, you know, we got water in the ground.
Good idea.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I understand, Mike, I understand. Like I said, we wanna get water in the ground.
Yeah, we don't want trip lines in this, we just wanna get this water in there.
For the emergency, that certainly makes sense.
Yeah.
You know, for this year, it certainly makes a lot of sense. There are, item, let's see, E3-5, all right, I'm sorry, I guess it'd be item 5. I'm going the wrong way here. There are some limitations, and those are, that item 5 is in there only because of water quality concerns. We don't want to,
Dairy water to be.
Yeah. We don't want,
Question.
we don't wanna be pushing anything down into, from our standpoint, from a GSA standpoint, we don't wanna exasperate any of the water quality issues that might exist out there.
I suppose in the delisted area, but.
You know, do we wanna have some standard on, it's gotta be 3 months before? So, I mean, because I look at farmers, they put fertilizer on different times, and some stays in the ground there for quite a while, and so, do we really wanna get into that water quality?
Yeah, so we did reach out to the Irrigated Lands Program, and we did ask them if they had a requirement or, any limitations that they had on any water going, on farm recharge. So we did at least try and reach out, and again, like I said, these are some initial numbers that we put out there, but we're open to getting some more research done to see if that number makes sense, or if that should be taken out entirely.
Eric, you're a farmer,
I gotta say, you're slowing down at least half of what we're talking about by putting that in there for 3 months. I mean, that's crazy. Like, what's fertilizer?
Right.
Manure, some people might have put 5 tons of manure on, it's not really gonna be, an issue for, but if you've got 50 tons, that's a whole different ballgame, right? So, the problem is, if somebody puts some phosphate on the ground, it's not readily leachable, it's not, or, nitrate is the main issue, right? I mean, let's focus on that.
Right.
I think just having the dairies on alert, saying, listen, sinking a bunch of dairy water isn't gonna help. And, or, you might even go to the point where if you spread sludge, because a lot of dairies take their solids out of their lagoons and they spread it on fields, if you're gonna sink water there, that's a problem. Because you're gonna have an issue in that situation. But how does the MUN come into this?
I was supposed to say, the delisted area probably would be,
Designation
Yeah.
area, we're good.
yeah.
Right. But there's not that much of that in Cooley side.
Yeah.
In fact, I have to go back and double check, I don't
None
think
in
any of it,
Cooley
yeah.
side.
I just look at this, Amir, as if a farmer's getting ready, he's gonna plant a field,
Yeah,
he has all the field prep, and then all of a sudden he sees this real wet year and said, hey, I'm gonna fallow it now and I can sink some water here, I'm better off sinking water.
yeah,
I hate to have that just get cut off because he did some land prep in advance.
right.
And with all these regulations now, it's not like they're over fertilizing, especially with the cost of fertilizers now, they're not gonna put on excess. I don't know, it caught my eye and like, do we really wanna get into that arena?
Correct me if I'm wrong, but if you're a grower and you've applied fertilizer, it's because you're planning to grow a crop.
Yes.
If you're planning to grow a crop, you probably aren't gonna put water on in excess. You're gonna.
No, you're irrigating or you're irrigating your crop. So there's a lot of nuance in what we're discussing right now.
Exactly.
But generally speaking, if you're trying to get water in the ground, most of the districts right now aren't putting those kinds of obstacles in the way of people. They're just saying like, Lower Tule, is giving us 90% counting for over irrigation. So if I'm watering my trees with my drip irrigation, I'm getting 90% credit for all the water I'm putting on right now. That's how you get water in the ground. And
And
I
that's
think,
because the trees are dormant right now, Eric, is that why they're giving you?
well, I would be
90%?
irrigating in December anyways to fill the profile.
Yeah.
So I'm getting both. But the point being is, now is the time to be leaching salt, right? I think the irrigated lands people have a hard time understanding the benefits of diluting that groundwater.
Yeah.
And I don't know that they ever really had that in their equation. They just rather keep everything on the surface, whereas everybody knows that's not gonna be the case, right? So get as much water in the ground as you can, you'll dilute that nitrate.
We had a lot of discussion at CV Salts on that very issue.
Yeah,
You gotta leach the root profile once in a while.
Yeah.
you have to. I mean, we're gonna have a bunch of salty fields if we don't.
Yeah.
So what we're doing right now, wherever we can, including places where we're not getting credit, is putting as much water on the ground as we can.
Yeah.
And using up as much water. And so that goes to the question of, okay, so what's the water source? Candidly, I'm bringing flood water through CID or Boswell or our systems, and I'm taking it over to 18-1 off of 4th Avenue. I'm irrigating pistachio trees, and I'm leaching salt, and I'm gonna run that as fast and often as I can. And can I get credit for that? If I can, great. If I can't, I'm still gonna do it. But there's not very many people doing that, and it bugs me. I see wells open right now on the east side, and it just blows my mind.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Anyways, you guys are going in the right direction, trying to get as much of it in the ground as you can.
That's
Yeah.
what we're trying. I mean, that's definitely the hope of this.
Track it, and if it comes to the Tri-County, you'll get a credit for it this
Yeah.
year.
Perfect. Yeah, we've got all our meter numbers for everything, just in case, and we're gonna keep track of it, and we'll go to battle if we have to, but.
Yeah. Good.
Yeah.
I suggest we just take B out of there.
Take the out? Yeah, I just made a note to myself that. Is there anything that was not included in this that you think should be that you guys have seen in other, is there anything that should have been included?
I haven't really got into the details on a lot of that stuff, so I would have to do that before I could.
Yeah.
This is the first policy I've seen like this, Mayor, I'm not aware of anybody else putting this out.
Well, Lower Tule has a policy, I haven't read it. Generally speaking, the guys are saying you're gonna get 90% credit, and that's really all I have to know. But I was gonna do it anyway, so.
Yeah, I mean, the percentages can totally be discussed. I think from Tri-County's perspective, we have a couple issues, right? One, we have the clay layers, so how much of that's really percolating and where is it going? Two, the 50% of the wetlands, we know that that's not really a recharge area, but
Yeah, I'm not suggesting it should be 90%.
right. That's why we came up with the
Right.
percentages we came up with, because
Yeah.
there are some
Right.
barriers to what we're doing,
Yeah.
so to
Really.
speak, so, but I didn't want to,
totally understand.
but I didn't want to, disincentivize anybody from putting water, and doing what you're doing this
Sure.
year, so.
Yeah.
I don't think you're advocating 90%, you're just giving us a
Well, yeah, that's
anything we can do is
Right.
great.
We want to keep it defensible from the GSA standpoint,
Sure.
but we also want to encourage
Yep.
Right.
the
Yeah, 'cause our
participation.
neighbors might question, just like we might question, so.
Right.
But I do have a question as far as, land that has been set aside in the past, conservation reserve. I know there's probably some rules as far as that goes too, right? I don't know what they are.
You're talking about on the wetland reserve easements?
I don't know that much about it. The ground that we bought in Angola, that is right around that block that I just, is in,
NRCS
yeah,
ground.
yeah.
You know, I want to say the easements on those are different depending on what they are. So the wetlands areas are particularly for water, right?
Mhm.
Some of that NRCS could be upland habitat, or it could be different habitat type sections. I'm not
The
certain.
discussions I've had with them, or not currently, but just within the last year, they're trying to find some way just to get water on there.
Yeah.
So even though I'll pick on the White Ranch, it was designed for a duck club, and so they had the areas that are gonna be wetted, and they have the upland area. They're like, if we can get water out there, Hail Mary, just pour it on there, because we're gonna take something rather than nothing.
Sure.
So I don't think there's gonna be any objection, although the technical language may say, but everyone's gonna applaud you for doing it. That's the read that I think, Kathy, you probably
Yeah,
get
no,
the
that's
same.
the read,
Yeah.
that's the read,
We're currently, Angola is putting water on some of that.
yeah.
But it takes me to 2E, though. I want to talk just a little about 2E, not as a stumbling block, but I know in many discussions, we talk about meters on wells and super ultra accurate measurement. Some of this water, you're gonna open a gate and a 24-inch pipe, and,
Mhm.
the measurements may not quite be as sophisticated as E implies. I just think we've got to recognize that.
And that's one of the hurdles we're dealing with in Lower Tule is that, some of our gates don't have that, facility, so we're not sinking water when we could be. And, we're just having to make those adjustments. Right now, I'm using a lift pump, burning diesel, instead of, because I can put a meter on it.
So they require the meter.
Yes.
Amir, I'm not a caveman, but I've been known to divert water by cutting the road. They have to kind of estimate, but the reality is, a reasonable estimate is,
Yeah.
as long as a person doesn't get carried away and overstating it.
Well,
It
and that's
does
what
get
they're
tough.
trying to avoid.
Yeah, it gets
Yeah.
tough. If you have, let's just say, we have water coming in from Pozo to all the nut growers out there, and
Right.
let's just say, we end up with multiple sources coming in, and, estimation by everybody becomes a little,
Yeah.
you have to be cautious, that's all I'm trying to
But
say.
then,
Because that will-
your example,
Yeah.
Kathy,
Inevitably, that will be the,
floods all this ground.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
How do you account for it? How do you?
The only way we were able to account for it is because the BLM, is they had to actually pump water up into the wetlands, and of course, we have a,
That you could,
Yeah,
we could quantify that.
yeah.
yeah,
Everything else is just out there.
yeah.
Yeah, you kinda have to how deep, how many acres, and, you know, kind of,
But we do have
Make an
some
estimate.
recharge areas there along the sand ridge and some areas that, in the wetlands that we probably down the road should be looking at in terms of sinking water there.
So, Carl, I think, you know, the way we have it worded is using a reasonable measurement method. So we don't specify meters, we don't specify, you know, it could be as much as documentation from the source. You know, that's the example we give, but I think any reasonable measurement, and, I'm gonna look, you know, I think keeping it broad like that, I don't wanna say that was, yeah, I was gonna use it, it's not vague, but broad.
right.
You know, that allows for that, and as long as, you know, as Deanna said, you don't want someone to come in and just make some ridiculous number and go.
Yeah, you put 500 acre feet in, not 1,000.
Yeah, right, so, I think we're open to that, and we realize this year in particular, you're gonna, the future policy might be a little bit more strict on some things, but this policy, I think, is really meant to say, hey, let's just get water on the ground this year.
So really what you're trying to do is you're trying to get the most bang for your buck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I would say the larger projects, and I call a project or an application, couldn't you qualify the method and the calculations? Meaning, like, if you take that step and say, okay, you know, you're applying for putting this much water on, how are you doing it? And then you have an engineer qualify the volume of water without having to meter it.
Yeah, so in that, you know, in the application,
Mm-hmm.
it does ask you for recharge measurement method.
Yeah.
So it gives you, you know, it uses, for example, meter, obviously, that's the easy one, but it does ask, just say, tell us how you measured it.
Right.
Give us an idea, and does that sound, you know, fairly reasonable? I think we're being fairly, you know,
I left it really, really broad, 'cause
yeah,
I recognize, you know, that some of these things aren't, you know, Tri-County is unfortunate in the situation that we don't have many, dedicated recharge basins because lots of reasons, conveyance issues, not great recharge areas, we're on the west side. So this was really meant to, in flood times, get the water on the ground, manage it, do what you can with it, and we wanna help your account with that as well. So, it's good for everybody, it's good for Tri-County, it's good for the grower, it's good for the overall sub-basin, I mean, it's good for everybody to get this water,
And then environmentally, I would think that, you know, there's, especially for Tri-County, because of the lack of areas that sink well, we should be looking pretty hard at the environmental benefits of running those sort of things, because I mean, everybody knows who has the keys to the state, right?
Yep.
So, in my opinion, that's something that maybe we haven't really dug in too deep, and that sounds like that's right up your alley.
Yeah, more than that. I mean, one of the things too is, have you guys ever thought about, you know, I guess they call them what, ejection wells, where you can actually sink water, and, you know, that, when I worked for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, I had a staff person that came out and said, well, I don't want them flooding stuff because the floodwaters will impact endangered species. And you're going, you know, it's kind of like the way the valley sort of developed.
Right.
But there's other ways to get water into the ground that maybe down the road in our projects we could
I
look
think,
at.
Kelly, on those, the jury's still out on that, because there's been issues, Southern California, that they stopped them putting aqueduct water in because it wasn't clean enough, so
Yeah.
the anti-deg policy, you know, is a big issue, and so
yeah,
personally, I'm nervous that when you start putting it down there, and then all of a sudden somebody says you degraded the waters of the state, and then what kind of cleanup and all that kind of mess are we gonna get into? But there's some other technology that's out there now that they're doing these reverse tile drains, you know, so you can still farm your crop. You know, and so during the year, if you ever have any excess, you put it in this reverse tile drain, and it puts it down there, and it's been pretty efficient, and it's working, and semi-tropic and some other areas have it. I think we're gonna see more of that, but those deep well injections, you gotta do filters, and then you're pumping in there and stuff, and
Not really.
I'm nervous about that one.
Just the upfront cost. I mean, right
Very
now,
expensive,
the
yeah.
water's here now,
Very
put it on the
expensive.
ground.
Yeah.
You can do it fairly economically.
Yeah, I agree with everything you guys said, there's too many gray areas, but I gotta think that in the future, it's gonna be a big deal, and one of the issues that we've always had with putting solar in at CID was the idea that during the years where we're not using our wells, we're just basically giving PG&E free electricity. But if you had a situation where you were injecting wells at the time where you don't need to be pumping wells, then you could be using that electricity and you could justify that expense a lot easier. I think, to me, that seems like a pretty decent solution if you have a power system and a well field in the same region.
They have shown some areas too, the injection wells, do help with subsidence. The Red Top particularly, they did that, and they used injection wells, and it, you know, slowed or stopped the subsidence in that particular area. But, gosh, we're just haven't, we don't have a project on the books yet, let's say that.
Let me get this meeting back on track here a little bit, but,
That's a great
So-
idea.
So, let's just last thing on this, emergency recharge policy, as I said, there is a landowner application and agreement. So the way that this would work is any landowner that is interested in, anybody with a basin safe account, because that's how we're accounting for it, who's interested in this, needs to fill out, this application, get us, get the agreement in place, and then after you've done all your recharge and everything else, come back and provide the requested information of how much and where, and obviously it might be multiple sites, and we just need to make sure that we keep that correct and basin safe, because that's where the credit's actually gonna be applied. But that's really the gist of this is let's give people credit in the basin safe accounts that they have.
Let me ask one other question too, Amir. Should we be looking at setting up an in-lieu pumping credit also? Let's say you have, pick on the Liberty Ranch. You
Yeah.
fill that up, and so after all these floodwaters are gone, just in essence free water to do this recharge. Now if you did surface storage and you use that to offset pumping, there be credits or a policy given for that?
It's not really in lieu. That just means you didn't run your pumps and you didn't get debited. I mean,
But we are I know it's different than physically getting water down in the ground, but, the in lieu pumping does leave water in there, and I guess that's something the landowners will just have to deal with.
I think Deanna makes a good point. Now that we're keeping score and we deduct when we remove it, in lieu does kind of give you a credit by not taking it.
yeah, you're not being
Whereas the other
debited.
way is
Yeah, that's right.
it always was considered second-class recharge when it's pretty direct, really.
Yeah.
So,
Okay.
we are looking for feedback on this. This is before we take it to the board. Couple weeks, we're hoping, March, 2nd is the board meeting, so we wanna try to give the board plenty of time to review this document.
And I think Stacy sent it out to everybody yesterday. Did everybody?
Document,
Yes.
in terms of the board members?
No, not the board.
We should send it out to, the board members and everybody that's here today and the, interested stakeholders, and then let them know 2 weeks.
Yeah.
You wanna make the changes first, or?
Yeah, I probably won't do that, and, that's probably a good call. We'll take out, 5B.
On your registration, or your application, you have provide copy of water right and contract on there. Just,
Surface water source.
yeah.
Okay.
Got the rest of that. Documented, and then what do you,
Yeah, we'll just strike that out.
Yeah.
and then Deanna 2C, clean that one up too.
2C.
Well, maybe
Okay.
identify surface water source.
Yeah, take out water right, yep, okay. Pretty good.
You mentioned March.
Good.
If the title is an emergency thing, it seems like by March, maybe the opportunities might be halfway
Oh,
past.
no, we'll go back and give you credit for anything that happened.
It's retroactive.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we'll do retro.
Yeah,
However, you know, there's gonna be a lot of people who don't know it until
Until we kind of adopt it.
yeah, we're gonna have to get this on the website.
We could do a special board meeting, I mean,
I wonder if
okay.
that would be appropriate as well.
we'll do that, we'll set a special board meeting up, we'll send out a doodle poll to the board members and do something on the book.
But to Eric's point, how do we get the landowners out there aware of,
Yeah.
you know, you guys need to start thinking about this or trying to do this to get some credits?
Most of them we have really good communication with, so we'll email them all, let them know. Most everybody's in contact with us. We could always send it out, you know, even with, we could even send it out with the next, month's billing too, 'cause you know, fourth quarter billing's coming out in February, so.
And I think, Eric, as you said, the people that are already doing it are gonna do it no matter what, 'cause you wanna get some, you know, and we just wanna make sure you understand that, hey, you're gonna get credit for it as well, so
Yeah.
it's a win-win.
I hope that everybody's doing it. I see there's a lot of people that aren't doing
Yeah,
it.
well, but I'm not sure, yeah, I'm not sure if the credit's gonna make that much difference, but it
Yeah.
might, you know.
And for the boards, feel that 75% and 50% makes sense to me.
Yeah, we'll leave those as is unless the board changes that. Okay, boy, are we still on 3A?
I thought we were done.
We're still on 3A. Okay, let me jump ahead to 3C just for a second. I probably should have just done this earlier. This is the Sigma Round 2 grant. The reason I'm doing that is just because we've mentioned it several times that there's a significant amount of money, that was requested. Specifically, the, Round 2 grant for Tri-County included a, additional work in the Allensworth, area, and it also included, a recharge basin for, near the Angelo well field. So those were two significant projects that were included in the Round 2 grant. DWR indicated that they've received 80 applications, and the amount of money requested was $750 million. There was about $230 million that was gonna go into, that's gonna be sent out. So as you can imagine, and we've been pretty clear on this, that, the funding is only gonna be, at best, a portion of the money requested. So realistically, we don't think either one of those two projects are gonna get funded. But there are other things that the subbasin, the modeling, for example, that the Thule subbasin has requested that we are hoping do get funded. We should find out in the May timeframe is what DWR told me last. So just so everybody's aware of that. You have a question, Carl? You have a very intent look on your face.
So listening. Yeah, the 750, and then you said, only
230 million.
230 is actually gonna be used, so
Yeah.
what happens to the rest of the 750?
They just won't be funded.
Yeah, it won't be funded.
So basically, 80 separate basins have applied for that money. They had $750 million worth of projects they wanted funded, but the government only has $230 million available.
So were they part of the cuts
So,
in Sacramento?
Oh, no. The contracts, or the grants always had $230 million. They were
Yeah.
always only gonna let
it just
utilities
says
have.
how many applicants
Over
we had.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, which we knew was gonna happen, because they opened it up to the medium and high. We're critically overdrafted, and there's high and there's medium, and they opened it to everybody. And then they said that those who hadn't received before, which were the medium and high, would, take priority.
right.
So that kind of puts us in a bad situation with that Sigma round two.
So where are we on the federal, the infrastructure money? Is there somebody out there kind of keeping us in the loop on when those dollars are gonna be coming down?
We have tried, Kathy, to get that information. We've actually even reached out to Congressman Valdeo's office as well. And I think that's probably our best bet, is to try and get, the Congressman's,
Yeah.
office to help direct us to, how much of it's bureau money, how much of it's land management, how much of it's, what federal agency is that money gonna come through? So I don't believe, there wasn't, as far as I know, I might be wrong on this, there wasn't any money necessarily earmarked for this particular area, although please don't quote me on that. And if it was probably more on the water treatment side, or, community type money. But we are gonna look and see if we can find some federal source of additional funds. And then obviously we wanna be able to have matching funds and utilize our DWR money to, meet those matching funds.
With that, if you ran across a source of federal money particularly for that conveyance,
Yeah, the conveyance piece is what I was thinking
Yeah.
about.
we're,
And also for
need there.
this conservation planning that we've worked on for years
Yeah.
across the valley, which also needs to have water conveyance connected with it, riparian, whatever, something like that, where we could get a group together to kind of promote conveyance to this area, because this is,
well, the water blueprint for the San Joaquin Valley has a Trans-Valley conveyance that they're working on. We have
Are
the
they-
alignment and everything. We've
are
even
you guys
done some
getting
of
any kind of,
We're
is there some leadership
trying very hard.
floating
We
to the
just
top that,
sent another letter to the governor, which has that, particular, project in it, and,
Where's the alignment?
the alignment right now, they looked at one that came right through Angola, but honestly, the Larry Lake, my understanding that Oswald did not want it coming through there. So, now,
Makes it tough.
yeah, now it's moved off of, Lost Hills area, and it kinda comes back through Kern, and then it comes right up to, the White River, near Allensworth area. That's how the alignment is set currently. So, and then from there, there's another canal that would go, north and south, that would go towards 198. And that way, other than the Frank Kern, or maybe it goes Park Frank Kern, then comes off, I'd have to look at that again. So they're trying to get water through that, at White River, to go up towards eastern Thule, towards that white area, and then come back towards us through our southeast area. Is kind of how that looks right now, but it's in flux, but it is a project that the water blueprint is pursuing.
Trans-Valley is gonna take water from, some kind of water from the aqueduct.
It will connect the aqueduct and the Frank Kern Canal in some respect.
It's interesting, rather than come through Angola where you go, go further
Keep it high.
downstream, kinda like, cut
198.
across the contours, like a skier, kinda, get high enough where you can, have it be downhill all the way to the destination, or almost all the way to the destination.
well, like the Frank
Absolutely, I mean,
Kern.
it's easy to say that here,
Right.
probably the devil's in the details.
Yeah.
Well, if they can't even file the land for their high-speed rail, it's gonna be a real challenge to get conveyance and, yeah.
But Tri-County, our biggest issue for Tri-County is that southeast area and not having conveyance. And that conveyance channel, from the Frank Kern into that area and or Deer Creek coming in through that Alpha area, we have to have that in order to balance that water needs in that area, and we don't have that currently. And it's my extreme frustration. I talk about it constantly. Poor Carlo has to hear me every day. How am I gonna get water out there? But
So there are two, I gotta get through
Sorry.
two very important items in the next 14 minutes. Just so everybody knows, there's two very important items that this committee in particular is gonna be working on for the rest of the year. One, I wrote multi-purpose, it's really the multi-benefit land repurposing grant. And two, it is, we need to, by June, we need to prepare a draft mitigation plan. Last time, it was about domestic wells, and this time it's about groundwater quality.
and subsidence.
Yeah, the subsidence issue is coming, yes, and subsidence. Four Creeks has prepared, a groundwater quality document that they are, a draft document that they've passed out to all the GSAs to review, and they would like us to consider that and take that, as part of our, specific mitigation plan. I'll be honest, I didn't get a chance to look at it very much before this meeting, so I don't have a lot of details to share with you on that. But as we put that together, we'll be taking it back to this group and to this committee. And so if any questions on that, I'm gonna keep this quick. Because we're running out of time. I let you guys talk too much about the other things. It is important, yeah. The multi-benefit land repurposing plan, though. I had a presentation that I was going to do for everybody, but you have a copy of that presentation in front of you. Just a very quick overview of slide 2 there. Very quick overview. It is $10 million grant. The types of projects that are included in there are listed. You can get multi-benefit recharge areas. These are not all the project types, by the way. I just copied a few of them on here. Planting cover crops, creation of habitat, incentive payments to landowners with 10-year public benefit. And that takes me to where we are hoping to end up on this, is we would like one of the projects to come out of this plan to be some kind of pilot program that is specific to some kind of fallowing program as well. So we talked about the fact that land flex at the beginning, that was DWR money. There's about $2.5 million unspoken for that's supposed to go into projects out of that $10 million. So there are some existing projects already that are going to use a bunch of the money. And then there's another $2.5 million that's not, I think it's actually 2.6, something like that. We would like to use a portion of that 2.6 to come up with a pilot program for Tri-County and have that available by the end of this year, so that as you're going into the fall, you're going into your decisions as a grower. Hey, Rusty, I think, can I ask you just to mute yourself? Because
Sure.
We're getting some, yeah, thank you. But the idea is for the next spring, as people are starting to make decisions on what you're going to plant in the fall, we have a program in place, and those that want to participate in the pilot program. What exactly the pilot program looks like, I don't know sitting here, because we are in a lot of trees, We understand that. But could we come up with a program that, the ultimate idea is to reduce groundwater pumping, right? And especially the overdraft. So are we buying credits? Are we doing something different than just saying, hey, fallow? You know, we understand you've got trees and fallowing may not be an option. Could we come up with a different way to incentivize the reduction of groundwater pumping through this program? That's what we want to do between now and the fall, is come up with that plan and start to put some meat on the bone with this group and come up with an idea for a pilot program, and then go in the fall and have that available for people that want to take advantage of it. I wish I had, I don't have all the details worked out because, we're still trying to figure that out, and we want the input from the growers. But what can we do as a GSA to take advantage of these funds that are available in a way that truly does minimize or reduce our groundwater pumping? Especially in a wet year like we're having right now, people might be, like, okay, maybe surface water or other water sources may be sufficient for me. So I'm not going to turn my pumps on. And I get, this is getting back to what Mike was saying. Can we incentivize that? So you use your surface water and you don't turn your pumps on. Maybe you get to participate in the program. You're not fouling, but you're also not pumping. So can we do something? And again, these are just me talking off the top of my head, right? Don't take any of this as part of the program, but I'm just trying to figure out how do we come up with a program that can accomplish these goals.
So the Thule Trust Land Fallowing Program, which is a bidding process, is that going to be expanded to Tri-County in this next year?
I think so.
Oh, that would be really great.
So I think one of the things that I did over the past couple of days is I looked at other incentive type programs that were done under SALC, which was a Strategic Growth Council funding over the past couple of years. So Madera County, Merced County, looking at how they put this incentive program with their land fallowing. So I've kind of done a little bit of look at that. We do have partners that might be interested in expanding out. I mean, now that we have Susan on board, that's going to be one of the tasks of the many tasks we've thrown at her. The other good thing that we were talking about is you have to have a 50% match for all the MLRP projects, except for incentives to landowners. So you can get 100% funding for the incentives if we want to do that. But it is going to be complicated, and I think in looking at what other folks have done, we really need the input from the landowners. It really needs to be beneficial, and it needs to be something that is driven by the GSA, by the landowners, to be successful.
The Ag Advisory Board that's going to be a part of the Thule Trust is going to run that for the multi-benefit land repurposing. When is that advisory committee going to be put together? Do we know?
Well, now that I'm in my second week.
We need answers now.
Yeah, it's definitely something that's on my radar. I don't know exactly at what stepping off point I am with that.
Right. I've made a request to the general MLRP group that we have a small subcommittee because there's too many people, and they're all talking. And I said, look, and then they go, oh, well, Kathy will include, no, you don't need to include me. I just want you to have like maybe 3 or 4 people that, with your leadership on the ag side and Sue on the self-help, but just 3 or 4 people that are going to drive that schedule and get it going instead of us spending an hour on the phone and talking. So I've been pushing from...
And Sue and I have had some individual conversations, and I think we have kind of the big picture idea, so now it's kind of narrowing that down and saying, okay, where do we start from here?
Well, Tri-County certainly would like to have an advocate or two, or grower, I should say, or two on that committee. I think it's really, really important. Because I know that's going to be a big, input into the core plan of this multi-land or multi-benefit, land repurposing, and so we definitely want to have somebody at the table.
And I think one of the things that Amir and I have been talking about
Probably
is that we are going to drive our local plan. We're not gonna sit around and
You
wait
didn't
for
hear
the
me, I
rest
said
of the
probably
world
Eric.
to come around. I mean, I look at all this stuff that's been going on in other areas, and I'm actually gonna go over and meet with, Jeannie Hobbit, who's been working on the Madera side. She started as a watershed coordinator like I did, and she does a lot of the outreach, but I think the main thing is, as Amir said, is take advantage of this funding and look at what would a land fallowing, or what would that look like for us in Tri-County?
And we have some unique, as Amir said, we have very little, we don't have large dairies with mass row cropping going on that they can fallow that portion. When we're really talking about setting up a program that most likely has to take tree production out over time. And so what does that look like? How do you do that? How do you, financially, how does that even work, right? How do you make that an economically viable program? We have some, and I want to say we don't have some land that can be fallowed in that way, but we don't have, jobs of it that will make a difference as far as keeping water in the ground that's currently being pumped.
To come up with a plan that fits us.
Yeah.
And, the traditional thinking of people in other parts of the valley where they can take row crops out, that's great, but it doesn't necessarily work for us. And I'm tired of Tri-County not fitting into, the box. If we're a square peg, right, and it's not fitting into exactly the way, like DWR came up with all these requirements for land flex,
Right.
that didn't help us. We have policies in place, everything that qualifies, but we don't have the domestic well density that's gonna allow us to win. So why are we being punished? And if we're at the end of the river, in some cases, why are we being punished for being at the end of the river? So we still have the same needs, we just gotta take advantage and figure out how we can get our hands on this money as well.
And create our own stream of financial support.
Yeah,
By
exactly.
creating a program that fits us rather than the one-size-fits-all.
Right.
Here, we had some of this discussion at the last meeting though, but.
That's the last board meeting.
On the land repurposing though, I'd still like to see that used more for projects that would help us with recharge or offset pumping.
Yeah.
And that helps these other communities too by keeping more ground in production for workers and the local economy. And so, that's what I'd like to see this thing focused on, if we could, package this, guided toward using the money to build projects.
Yeah.
And I know this, Grandiana, he's correcting me, saying this money isn't to build the projects, but
There's some there for the
yeah.
project, but so it's specific, it has specific lanes that it can be sent in.
Yeah, it's for projects, just not the type you're thinking of.
Well, you can't do a recharge project with this money because you can't take the water back out of the ground. This money,
Well, but if it makes it sustainable by keeping it up higher, then it alleviates subsidence, every little bit will help.
Right. So, Mike, thinking along the lines that you just said, let's use this year as an example. The last one we were talking about was 5 years ago in 17, right? If you've got someone else to build a project that we only use once every 5 years, that's a win in my mind.
Yeah.
Right? Because when these years do come by, we gotta take advantage of it.
We gotta put that water, and that's what I'm saying, you already had a major land retirement program in the middle of your Tri-County, and that was that CVPIA experiment, and 3 big landowners sold their property, and you've got this 7,000 acres that now has been taken out of production in perpetuity. And, it's a different
that fit your definition of 10-year public benefit? I mean, is public benefit very broadly defined? So retaining local economy and jobs and keeping other lands of production all fit?
We could certainly show that putting water in the ground is public benefit, for sure. And by the way, like I said, I didn't give you the full, Kathy actually has the full document. I didn't give you
The full document, I actually put it into kind of a PowerPoint where all the little pieces are there, so you can go in and say, oh, yeah, what's here, and
Yeah.
but I think it's still, don't you think it's still flexible enough that our plan will be our plan?
But, and Mike, I think Deanna did previously send out to all the board members the document, but we'll get you, the summary type document that you'll need. We are completely open to looking at, a recharge, or if nothing else, maybe we get the design of the recharge, if we can at least find out where the good recharge locations are. But there are some very specific limitations on this money, and that multi-benefit part, it will pop up a million times in the information you'll read. And I wish we could say that, hey, we could just go out and do AEM surveys and look at all the areas that and pay for that, but it won't allow us to do that.
Yeah, this sounds harsh, but it seems like everything gets focused on, we gotta do something for disadvantaged communities, when helping the farmers and keeping grounds in production helps those disadvantaged, and we need to try to help our farmers as much as we can in this thing.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Yeah.
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 Anyway.
Part of the outreach that will come out of the MLRT will also include some modeling that shows that social economic impact of all of this, so it will help to be something.
There's not enough money to really look at the economic impact, so I wanna go for federal dollars, to really look at the economic impact of farmers. And the Farm Bill is just coming up. I was talking to Sarge Green at Fresno State, yesterday, and I think we need to tap into some of that, because it's fine, like you said, it's fine to talk about, we're gonna do these things that benefit disadvantaged communities, and we're gonna do things, but I think it really, when you start every year, Fresno County, Tulare County, back and forth, who has the greatest GMP related to ag, what is really gonna be the hit on our valley? I think people are gonna really want, I wanna know, is my house in Fresno gonna go down in value because we no longer have a sustainable ag program in the valley? Are we gonna become are we gonna become just one big wildlife refuge out here? We used to joke about that in the High Plains. But I think there's these other pieces that you're alluding to that this is just a step in a direction that the Department of Conservation wants to go in, that has that benefit for groundwater sustainability, but you also have to show this other economic, local, as you were mentioned, something connected to the community. And on a broader scale, if we take ag out of the valley,
On the broad
You're gonna see a
scale,
lot of dust and bugs.
on
Yeah,
the
there
broad
is.
scale, there is an economic study Dr. Sunding did that's on the Water Blueprint for the San Joaquin Valley's website that is very
Good.
extensive, and it is devastating.
yeah.
So, you can see that, that's been done, and I think they're
PTSD
doing
work.
some more, specific work too, but that initial study is out there.
Now we're ending on a real,
I know.
Another downer.
Thing is, this particular grant, it's like a piece of fruit on the tree, right?
It
There's
is.
this giant tree, and
Yeah.
this is just one grant opportunity that came, that's just a piece of fruit on that tree that we luckily got to take we get a portion of it, we're gonna try to use it in the best way possible. But even, when we were just out at Allensworth, the community fully understands that ag going out around them is devastating to them. They don't want that either. They wanna stay in what happens around them. And that's some of this, educational piece to this grant, is helping communities understand what it means if ag production goes out around them. It's not good for them, particularly if it's done in a haphazard way.
Yeah. And
It's gonna
that's
be
some of the
devastating.
modeling, that's UC Davis, Tom Harmon, I spoke with him yesterday, and that's some of the modeling that they're doing, and that we're looking forward to see, so that we can use that to help educate those communities, and,
Right now, the next steps for us is really to move forward with MLRP plan specific for Tri-County. That will identify, the hope out of that is to identify some projects, it's to identify, it's to get a land, it's to come up with how we're gonna repurpose that land. And then that would, having a land fallowing policy, and I'm gonna call it fallowing for lack of, because that's what, Land Flex and other things called it. That will allow us to get some additional and be eligible for some additional funding as well. It's to finalize the things that Deanna talked about, that communication plan. So we're taking advantage of some of this funding that's coming through MLRP to take care of some of the, items that we'll need to get, and be eligible for additional funding. I do wanna make sure, Mike, though, that we're not gonna, it should identify all types of projects, and including, and especially if recharge options are available, or what we need to do to identify those at a bare minimum so that we can direct some additional. Maybe the project that we ask for money is not a pilot program, but a recharge, evaluation, actual on-site recharge. We've picked a location and we're gonna go out and do the geotechnical investigation and all of those types of investigations. And do all the design work necessary to be ready for when other funding might be available.
Like we were talking about the conveyance there from Pozo, the Pozo Canal that comes out of that kind of flows back and forth. And we found out, we hit a brick wall because we don't own, Atwell Island or Tri-County doesn't own the whole easement along there. Well, maybe we look at the part that's on the BLM property, that you can get a right of way. And we say, we're gonna at least go after this piece, and then look at an area where we could actually do some storage near there, which would probably be in the Tulare Lakeside. But, I mean, there's little things like that we've talked about conceptually that would be great to start putting into this plan, and then say, 10 years, maybe we'll get the funding for it, and you're still in the middle of your GSP.
So let's take,
Amir kind of said it, if you can get a project, it doesn't cost you any money. I would be willing to speculate that if these wet conditions cause a flood threat in this area, you'll find that you'll have the ability to use that ozone now for a period of time, until the flood threat no more. So if a project that enables that makes sense, then you're in. If it doesn't,
Sure.
it doesn't.
So every 5 years, when you have a big flood, you're at least, you have the agreement to move that water through there.
Whereas those same people, they're very protective of their system. They spend a lot of time getting to where they are and a lot of money, and in my mind, if it were mine, I'd be protective too.
Sure.
So one thing I would encourage you guys to think about, though, too, is that perspective of bringing in more water is not necessarily the same perspective that all of our landowners have. There are some people who probably are going to reach the end of their lives on those trees and then have a decision to make about replanting and making that decision. So we do want to take into account, as we're writing this plan, there's gonna be the demand side the supply side to bring in more, but there may also, we wanna focus on some demand reduction as well. So I think we wanna balance those two out as we're trying to move forward on this. And like I said, we do have to have we need to have as a GSA some plan for what happens if people do start pulling trees out, not tomorrow, but 10 years from now.
Yep.
I know, that's a downer way to end this discussion.
That's the situation we're in. in some areas.
Yeah.
I mean, it just is.
That's
In
reality.
that whole valley, I mean, we know some agriculture's coming out of production. We wanna protect them, as much of it as we possibly can, but that is going to occur. And so, some of these programs, you know, they seem completely counterintuitive by the way we feel in our hearts about what we wanna do,
Yeah.
but they're important, and they will be to the landowners. So, you know, doing the best we can to help facilitate some of that in a way that's, you know, beneficial, if you can say beneficial. I'm sure that's not the right word, is what we wanna do. But it's tough. It's not, you know, thank God we have this wet year. This is a real miracle in the
Yeah,
Sigma world,
yeah,
because we
yeah.
were facing,
We
if
dodged the
this
bullet.
next year had been really dry, we were really, I think, facing some harsh,
Yeah.
circumstances
And
from the state.
this year will really be a blessing if it would, if it would
Yeah.
state policy a little bit.
Yeah.
It would be amazing, because they fritter away a lot of resources.
I agree with Rusty. I'm seeing articles and letters and really on both sides of the fence, happening this year that we have not seen in some time. We certainly didn't see it in 2017 or 2019, and this year we're seeing it. And that has to do with Sigma and the reality on the ground, and these studies that are coming out showing the devastation, the economic devastation to these counties. Counties are starting to push back at the state level and saying, what are we gonna do without our economy? And so you're starting to see a little bit of the pendulum coming back, I think. It's slow, but I'm optimistic that it's happening, even on a small basis, so.
Yeah, people are coming out of their corners. They're coming out of their corners a little bit.
I agree.
Yeah.
Exciting times. All right, well.
Last thing,
we're
Rusty,
probably-
where's the governor on his well ordinance or emergency declaration on the wells? You gonna pull it now that we got wet year?
You know, I don't know, Mark. I'll check and I'll let you know. I sent him the article that I sent you, and even the newspaper, because I thought as interesting as the article was, the placement was even more interesting. And you know, this is the senior leading environmental reporter, maybe in California, you know, but certainly at the Mercury News. And that's what's different about it. You just got to put it in context. You can see that all of a sudden, I mean, he's practically calling for a reset. We need to kind of rethink how we do some of these things because of, you know, changing conditions, you know, and I mean, people have been, you know, so steadfast in their opinions and positions for such a long time. We've all lived with it and the devastating consequences. So anyway, I'm a little more optimistic than I've been in a while.
But
And
it'd
God
sure
does
be
the
great if he
precipitation
pulled
sure
that.
helps.
It'd sure be great if he'd pull that executive order off, you know, so these farmers wouldn't have to jump through so many hoops. You know, get a
Right.
replacement well or even a new well, you know, they've got to deal with Sigma, so, you know, we don't need that hanging out there.
I'll check with him.
Great.
All right, well, I think we're a little over our last thing. There is a task force that the governor has put together for this California Drought Resiliency Interagency Partners Collaborative, called DRIP.
That noted last night.
Yeah, I got what we need. Yeah.
I wonder how much money that costs to come up with that name.
That's that group of what, it's like 28 people or something like that?
Yeah,
That group frightens me a bit,
yeah, it's
honestly.
frightening me.
Reading that,
Yeah.
I go, no, we do not need this, but.
Yeah.
You know, I was
You guys
on the
are welcome.
visioning for the Department of Fish
Timely
and
too.
Game.
Yeah.
Dan Dooley got me on that group, and I was like one of 28 people. The only accomplishment, I did it strictly as a volunteer, is we changed the name. That's all we did. Then later on, we did get some better science going on and things like that, but the initial stuff was just changing the name.
Yeah.
And I finally said, hey, I can't keep on running to and from. But again, on this, it'd be interesting to see what they'll accomplish.
Whatever comes out of this will probably not be good. That's my opinion of that.
Yeah, considering the makeup of that group, I can't imagine.
Yeah,
it's
it's heavily weighted towards the environmental side and the
Yeah.
NGO side.
Yeah.
And then you get a couple of ag people, and then they're supposed to start, developing what? More regulation, more, no.
Yeah.
Supposed to be that too, Eric.
The drip shift task force.
I don't know, I looked at that and
figured you
shook my
weren't
head that
sufficiently
way.
depressed enough, Eric, so I figured I'd save that for
Doesn't
last.
surprise me anymore.
All right. Our next meeting is, February 22nd, and there's a board meeting on March 2nd,
Although we're gonna,
unless we do a special.
party that day.
yeah, we'll try to put together a special meeting to pass that,
I'm
research
gonna probably
policy
be
earlier.
up at North Star, but I tell them I have to have the day off.
You know, I don't think people even know what
Yeah,
George
just,
Washington's
we don't need
birthday is.
to do any more than pass the policy, really.
It's a week holiday for all the Bay Area.
Thank you,
We
Rusty.
combined it with the,
Call-in option is gonna be off the
President's Day.
table.
Yeah.
People